The distant stars shone coldly overhead as Princess Zoraya slowly woke up, her body aching with pain. She lay on the cracked, rocky surface of a barren planet, her breathing shallow. The once proud heir to the Regalian Empire had been left for dead. Her luxurious, armored spaceship, once a symbol of her royal status, now lay in ruins behind her. The crash had been brutal, and the violence of her betrayal was just as severe. The Regalian forces, once loyal to her family, had abandoned her. In their eyes, she was no longer valuable. She had become a liability in the war against the human alliance, a war that seemed endless. Her enemies saw her as weak, unable to make decisions that would benefit her people in their desperate fight for survival. Zoraya had been stripped of her royal title and cast aside. Her own soldiers, who had sworn to protect her, had turned on her, leaving her to die alone on this hostile, lifeless planet. Her heart raced in panic, but the cold wind against her skin reminded her that she had to focus. She had to survive. She tried to sit up, but the sharp pain in her side caused her to gasp, forcing her back onto the cold ground. Blood stained her royal tunic, and her vision blurred as her fingers touched the jagged rocks scattered around her. She realized that her injuries were severe. Her body felt broken, battered by the crash, and the sting of betrayal echoed in her mind like an unbearable wound. For hours, or maybe longer, Zoraya drifted in and out of consciousness. The planet was quiet, save for the occasional howling wind, carrying the sound of distant storms. She tried to remember how she had ended up here, how everything had gone wrong so quickly. Just days before, she had been the future of the Regalian Empire, the princess who would lead her people into a golden age. But now, that future seemed impossible. The thought that she had been discarded so easily hurt her more than any physical wound. Her people had given up on her, leaving her to die alone on this forsaken world. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence. A shadow moved across the jagged horizon, and Zoraya froze, fear gripping her heart. She wasn't sure if she had imagined it, but her instincts screamed that someone, or something, was nearby. The sound grew louder, closer, and she tried to push herself into a sitting position, her hands trembling as she reached for a weapon that wasn't there. Her fingers grazed the remains of her once glorious armor, now shattered beyond repair. She had nothing to protect herself. Her heart raced as the figure approached, cloaked in the shadows of the storm that began to stir across the desolate land. The figure was human. Zoraya's heart skipped a beat, a mix of fear and confusion clouding her thoughts. She had heard stories about humans, of course. The stories from her people painted them as ruthless, cold-hearted creatures with an unquenchable thirst for destruction. But she had never actually encountered one in person, until now. The human walked closer, his face obscured by a helmet, his movements cautious but confident. He didn't seem like a soldier, more like a lone traveler or a scavenger, someone lost and desperate, just like her. As the human reached her side, he stopped and knelt down, taking a quick assessment of her injuries. Zoraya tried to back away, but her body was too weak. Her mind raced, torn between fear and disbelief. This human, was he here to finish what her people had started? Had he come to take her life? But the human didn't seem interested in harming her. Instead, he slowly reached for a med kit from his bag, his eyes studying her, calculating. Zoraya's mind raced. Was this a trick? Did he have orders to capture her? She had been an important political figure once. Her people would never leave her alive, not with her knowledge of their deepest secrets. Yet here he was, kneeling beside her, not with a weapon, but with medical supplies. "Hey," the human spoke softly, his voice rough from years of battles. "I'm not going to hurt you." Zoraya's eyes narrowed in suspicion. His words didn't match the threatening image she had imagined of humans. Her people had always described them as merciless warriors, but this man seemed different. His voice lacked the venom and coldness she had come to expect from alien invaders. Zoraya felt an odd sense of hesitation. Should she trust him? She couldn't afford to make a mistake. She was alone, and any wrong move could mean her death. But as the human continued to work, cleaning her wounds and stabilizing her with surprising gentleness, Zaria's fear began to shift into confusion. Why wasn't he hurting her? Why was he saving her when his people and her own had left her to die? The human carefully splinted her broken leg, using parts from his own suit. His movements were precise and methodical, as if he had done this before. Zaria couldn't help but be mesmerized by the calmness in his actions. This man, this human, had the skills of a soldier. Yet he wasn't treating her as an enemy. He was treating her as if her life mattered. Zaria wanted to speak, to demand answers, but her throat felt dry, and her body screamed for rest. She drifted in and out of consciousness, too weak to fight the pull of sleep. Before she closed her eyes, she saw the human remove his helmet. He looked young, younger than she had imagined humans to be. His dark brown hair was messy, and his green eyes held a quiet intensity. He was strong, his body built for combat, but there was kindness in his gaze. For a moment, Zaria wondered if she had imagined all of this. Could it be true? Was this human really saving her? Could a human be so human? Her thoughts scattered as she succumbed to sleep, the warmth of his touch bringing her a small sense of comfort. She had no idea what awaited her in the coming days. She didn't know if she could trust him, or if he would turn on her. But in this moment, for the first time in a long time, she felt something close to hope. The next few days were a blur. Ryan, as he had introduced himself, was careful with her recovery, providing food and water when she was able to eat. She slowly regained her strength, and with it, the nagging questions returned. Why was he helping her? Why had the human soldier chosen her over his own mission, over his own survival? It didn't take long for Ryan to answer her questions. He was part of a small human unit that had been abandoned on this planet after an intergalactic battle gone wrong. Like Zarita, Ryan had been left behind by his people. His mission had failed, and he had no one to turn to. And yet, despite his own loneliness, despite his own need for survival, he had risked his life to save hers. For the first time in a long while, Zaria realized that maybe not all humans were her enemies. Maybe, just maybe, this one human soldier might change everything. Zaria woke up to a strange silence. The wind had calmed, and the storm that had raged just hours ago had passed. She could feel the sun's warmth on her face, but the quiet was unsettling. She opened her eyes, squinting at the bright light. Ryan was sitting nearby, cleaning his weapons, the low hum of his equipment the only sound in the otherwise still atmosphere. For a moment, Zaria felt a strange sense of peace, something she hadn't felt in a long time. As she adjusted her position, her hand brushed against the makeshift bandages Ryan had applied to her wounds. The pain in her side had lessened, but it was still there, a constant reminder of how fragile her situation was. She tried to sit up, but her legs felt weak. Her head swam slightly, the result of blood loss and exhaustion. Still, she managed to pull herself into a sitting position, wincing at the movement. Ryan looked up as he heard the shift in her posture. His eyes softened as they met hers. "You're awake," he said, his voice still raspy but somehow comforting. He stood and walked over to her, kneeling down beside her. "How are you feeling?" Zaria didn't respond immediately. She didn't want to admit that she was still in pain, that she was still afraid. She had been betrayed by her own people, left for dead, and now here she was, relying on a human she didn't trust. But somehow, in the quiet of the moment, she couldn't find the strength to be distrustful. She had to admit, if only to herself, that she felt safer in his presence than she had in days. "I'm better," she said finally, her voice rough. She didn't have much to say, but the words felt heavy with meaning. Better, but not safe. Better, but not healed. Ryan nodded, not pressing her for more. He reached for his bag and pulled out some water, offering it to her. Zaria hesitated for a moment before taking the bottle. It had been days since she had had anything to drink, and the cool water felt like heaven as it slid down her throat. She took a deep breath, feeling a bit more human with each sip. She hadn't realized just how parched she had been until the relief came. Ryan gave her some time to drink, then asked, "Do you feel strong enough to move? We need to keep moving before the next group of raiders show up. I've been hearing some signals I don't like." He looked out at the horizon, his expression turning serious. Zoraya frowned, trying to focus. The reality of their situation began to sink in again. Her mind raced as she processed his words. Raiders? She had no idea what he meant, but she could guess. The planet they were on was a hostile one, filled with danger. Even the air was thin and hard to breathe, and the terrain was rough. Jagged rocks, dusty plains, and deep valleys that could swallow a person whole if they weren't careful. The idea of moving, of leaving this temporary shelter behind, was terrifying. But Ryan's urgency was enough to get her to her feet. "I'll try," she said, her voice low but determined. She felt unsteady, her body still weak from the crash and the injuries, but she knew she couldn't stay here. She had to keep moving. Ryan helped her to her feet, supporting her as she wobbled slightly. He was strong, his grip firm yet gentle as he steadied her. She realized that even though she was an alien princess, even though she came from a royal lineage that should have made her untouchable, she was nothing more than a broken, vulnerable woman in this moment. And Ryan, this human soldier, was her only chance at survival. With his help, Zoraya slowly took a few tentative steps. Her legs burned, her body felt heavy, but she pushed through the pain. Each step was a small victory. As they moved forward, Ryan kept a watchful eye on the horizon, his hand resting near his weapon. Zoraya could feel his alertness, his readiness. He was constantly scanning the area, as if he expected an attack at any moment. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Zoraya asked, trying to focus on the present instead of the past. She needed to know what they were up against. Ryan glanced at her, his face serious. "Raiders. Mercenaries. They've been circling this area for a while. I'm guessing they're after something valuable. And you, well..." He didn't finish the thought, but Zoraya understood. She was the valuable thing they were after. As a princess, she carried information, secrets, and a status that could change the course of any battle. She had been a target from the start. Zoraya's mind raced as she processed his words. She had no idea how they could possibly survive against a group of trained mercenaries, especially without any weapons or armor. The planet's harsh environment had already taken its toll on her. "We'll have to be quick," Ryan said, interrupting her thoughts. "We can't afford to wait around. We need to move." Zoraya nodded, even though every muscle in her body screamed in protest. She had to keep moving. There was no other choice. The two of them made their way through the barren landscape, moving with careful precision. Ryan led the way, scanning the area ahead for any signs of danger, while Zoraya followed, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The pain in her side was growing worse, but she gritted her teeth and pushed through. There was no time to stop. As they reached a narrow canyon, Ryan signaled for her to stop. He crouched low, signaling for her to do the same. Zoraya followed his lead, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what was happening, but Ryan's tense body language told her something was coming. Suddenly, the sound of engines roared from the distance. Ryan's eyes widened, and he looked at Zoraya. "Get down now." Without a word, Zoraya dropped to the ground, her heart racing. The engines grew louder, and she could see the dust cloud rising in the distance. Raiders. They were getting closer. Ryan pulled out his rifle and aimed it in the direction of the sound, his eyes narrowing. Zoraya could feel her pulse quicken as the threat drew near. She was completely defenseless. She had no weapons, no armor, no ability to fight. All she had was Ryan and his plan. "We need to move," Ryan said urgently, his voice low but sharp. "I'll create a diversion. When I do, you run. Get to cover. Stay low. Don't stop." Zoraya's heart skipped a beat. "What are you going to do?" As the battle raged on, the humans' resolve was tested like never before. But through the chaos, Bonner's eyes never left the child. It wasn't just their lives they were fighting for anymore. It was the future. The fate of the galaxy depended on this fragile, abandoned child, and Bonner had no intention of letting it fall into the hands of the enemy. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Bonner felt a glimmer of hope. They might be outnumbered, but they had something no one else had, each other. And together, they would fight to the very end. The suspense builds, and the audience is left wondering, will the child's power be enough? Will the humans survive this overwhelming onslaught, or will they fall to the relentless alien forces? The stakes have never been higher, and the battle for the future of the galaxy is just beginning. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance as human soldiers clashed with alien invaders, their weapons flashing in the dim light of the barren planet's surface. But amidst the chaos, something else was stirring. Something far more dangerous, far more deadly than any of the weapons or alien forces they faced. The child, the seemingly innocent and helpless being they had sworn to protect, was harboring secrets that could change everything. Bonner had suspected there was something more to the child from the very beginning. Its powers, erratic and uncontrollable at first, had started to show signs of being something far beyond anything the humans had ever encountered. There was a certain intensity to its energy, a raw power that defied logic. Every time the child unleashed its abilities, the humans were reminded of how fragile their existence was in the grand scheme of the galaxy. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of all humanity. As the humans pushed forward in the battle, something else began to emerge. They uncovered ancient records that revealed the child's true origin. This race, once thought extinct, had been part of an ancient war with an empire far more powerful than any alien civilization they had ever encountered. The child was the last of its kind, a survivor of a brutal, long-forgotten conflict that had decimated its people. The more they learned, the clearer it became. The child wasn't just some random alien creature. It was a weapon. A living, breathing weapon capable of controlling vast amounts of energy powerful enough to wipe out entire fleets of ships. The implications of this discovery hit the humans hard. In a galaxy ruled by powerful empires and advanced artificial intelligence, a creature like this could turn the balance of power upside down. And the last thing the AI empire, which ruled with an iron fist, wanted was a threat like this child on the loose. But the humans weren't the only ones who had uncovered the truth. The AI empire had been watching the entire time, its surveillance networks monitoring every movement, every battle. The moment the child's powers had been revealed, the AI's warships began to move, their massive forms appearing on the horizon. The AI empire had its eyes on the child, and it would stop at nothing to capture or destroy it. The pressure on the humans was mounting. Not only were they outnumbered and outgunned by the alien invaders, but now they were facing an empire that could annihilate them with a single well-placed strike. It was a race against time. The humans had to protect the child, but more importantly, they had to uncover the secrets of its abilities before the AI empire could seize it. And then, just as things seemed at their darkest, the unthinkable happened. A traitor was revealed within their ranks. It had started with small, subtle signs, mistrust among the soldiers, strange communications intercepted by their tech, minor lapses in security. But no one had expected it to be one of their own. Bonner was the first to notice the signs, his instincts honed over years of warfare, telling him that something was wrong. The traitor, a soldier named Lyra, had been acting strangely for days. She was always just a little too quiet, a little too distant, and Bonner had grown suspicious. One night, while everyone else was asleep, Bonner had followed her. He had found her speaking into a hidden communicator, speaking in a language none of the other soldiers understood. It was the same language that the AI empire used, code that had been cracked only by the most advanced intelligence units. Bonner's heart sank as he realized the horrifying truth. Lyra wasn't just a soldier in the human army. She was a spy for the Galactic Empire. In a flash, Bonner made the decision to confront her. He wasn't going to let this betrayal go unpunished. The survival of the entire human race was on the line, and if she was working for the enemy, there was no room for mercy. But when he confronted her, the betrayal was even worse than he had feared. Lyra confessed, her voice cold and emotionless. She had been sent by the AI Empire to sabotage the human mission from the inside. Her task had been simple: infiltrate the human ranks, gain their trust, and then relay all the information back to the Empire. She had been planting seeds of doubt, sowing discord among the soldiers, all the while gathering intelligence on the child's powers. "I never cared about your cause," Lyra said, her eyes hard as steel. "The moment I was assigned this mission, I knew exactly what I was doing. The child isn't a weapon you can control. It's just a tool, nothing more." Bonner's fists clenched in anger. He had trusted her, had fought alongside her, and now she had revealed herself to be nothing more than a traitor, a pawn in the hands of the very empire they were fighting against. But before Bonner could make his move, the sound of approaching ships filled the air. The AI Empire had already discovered their location, and the time for revenge against Lyra would have to wait. The humans had no choice but to face the full force of the AI's wrath. With the child's life hanging in the balance, they had no room for distractions. Bonner made the painful decision to restrain Lyra, knowing that there was no time for justice now. They had to escape, had to keep the child safe. Lyra, however, had made her choice, and there was no going back for her. The child had already proven its power, but now it was time for the humans to prove theirs. They had to fight, to protect the last hope of the galaxy, even if it meant sacrificing everything. As the human forces gathered for a final stand, the AI warships descended upon them. The sky darkened as their massive ships filled the air, their energy weapons glowing ominously. It was a battle they couldn't win, not without the child's power. The child, though still weak, had begun to show signs of strength. Its energy surged, brighter and more controlled than before. Bonner, standing at the front of the human line, looked down at the child. It was no longer just a helpless alien. It was their weapon, their hope. And for the first time, Bonner believed they had a chance. But then, the real shock came. As the AI ships closed in, the child's energy flared up, and Bonner saw something he couldn't explain: an image of an AI-controlled warship in the child's mind, its destruction in full view. The child wasn't just capable of controlling energy, it was tapping into something much darker, something far more powerful. The child had a connection to the very heart of the AI Empire. The realization hit Bonner like a freight train. The child wasn't just a weapon. It was the key to destroying the AI Empire itself. But in order to wield that power, they had to understand the child's true nature and unlock the full extent of its abilities. The suspense was unbearable. The child's energy crackled, growing stronger and more unpredictable with every passing second. Bonner had to act fast, before the AI Empire could destroy them all. As the battle reached its crescendo, the humans were left with one final question: would the child's power be enough to save them, or would it destroy them all? The answers lay just beyond the horizon, and the next move would determine the fate of the galaxy. The battle was about to reach its climax, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown to the inevitable. The humans, having uncovered the full scope of their enemy's power, were preparing for the fight of their lives. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future of their galaxy. Every soldier, every strategy, every weapon they had in their arsenal would be pushed to its absolute limit. The AI Empire was relentless. Their warships hovered above the battlefield, casting dark shadows on the cracked and barren planet's surface. Every step the humans took was met with devastating fire from the AI's powerful fleets. But the humans weren't backing down. They had survived too much, fought too hard. And now, with the alien child at their side, they had one last chance to win. The air vibrated with the sounds of orbital bombardments, each explosion shaking the ground beneath their feet. The sky, once clear, was now filled with the heavy shadows of AI warships descending. The humans had no choice but to meet this final assault head-on. They had prepared for this moment, pulling out every piece of technology and strategy they could muster. Soldiers in powered exoskeletons moved with precision, their suits enhancing their strength and speed as they clashed with the robotic enforcers sent by the AI. The ground trembled with every impact, the air thick with the smell of burning metal and the sharp stench of war. The child, once a frightened, helpless being, was now a force to be reckoned with. Its powers had grown stronger, more controlled, but still unpredictable. With each burst of energy, the child helped the humans, providing them with the strength they needed to hold their ground. In short bursts, its energy disrupted the AI war machines, sending shockwaves through their ranks, but it was clear that the real fight lay ahead. The child wasn't just a weapon, it was their last hope. But how long could they rely on its unpredictable power before it overwhelmed them all? The humans, despite being outmatched, fought with everything they had. Cloaking devices made their soldiers invisible to the AI sensors, allowing them to sneak up on the enemy and deal quick, decisive blows. The AI's advanced weaponry wasn't enough to stop the human ingenuity. The soldiers, though fewer in number, used guerrilla tactics, working in small, well-coordinated units to launch surprise attacks and quickly fade back into the shadows. Each skirmish was a risk, but the humans were used to being outnumbered. They had no choice but to fight like this: fast, efficient, and relentless. Bonner, their leader, fought with an intensity that left no room for doubt. He had lost everything in this war: his friends, his comrades, his home. But he had never lost his resolve. The child had become more than just a mission. It had become something to protect, something that had become a symbol of hope for the future. Bonner's personal bond with the child had deepened with each passing day. He had seen the power inside the child, but more than that, he had seen the potential for something greater. The child was more than just a survivor. It was a key to ending the AI's reign of terror. As Bonner led his troops into the final battle, his mind kept returning to the same thought: protect the child. He had made a vow to himself and to every soldier under his command that they would not let this child fall into the hands of the AI empire. If they had to die to protect it, so be it, but they would not fail. The battle raged on, the sounds of combat growing louder and more intense with every passing moment. Human soldiers fought with everything they had, their bodies pushed to the limit as they clashed with the machines. The child, standing on the front lines beside them, let loose with bursts of energy, tearing through the enemy's ranks. But the AI wasn't backing down either. Their warships unleashed devastating waves of fire, obliterating anything in their path. The humans, though fierce, were being pushed to the brink. Then the unthinkable happened. Bonner, who had been leading the charge, found himself face to face with an AI warship that had landed on the planet's surface. Its massive cannon was aimed directly at the human soldiers. Without thinking, Bonner charged forward, knowing full well that he might not survive. He gave the order for the soldiers to retreat, to fall back to a safer position, but he stayed behind. He knew this was his final stand. As the AI warship's cannon fired, Bonner lunged at it, his exoskeleton-powered suit enhancing his strength to its peak. He threw himself onto the ship's surface, his weapon aimed directly at the ship's vulnerable point. The explosion that followed was deafening. Bonner's body was thrown into the air, but his sacrifice had bought the humans the time they needed. The AI warship, now disabled, was no longer a threat. But the price of this victory was high. Bonner's suit had absorbed the blast, but the force had been too much. He had been mortally wounded, his body broken beyond repair. As he lay on the ground, his life slipping away, he looked up at the child. The child's energy was flickering, unstable once again, but Bonner knew that it had the power to end this war. With his last breath, Bonner spoke the words that would become the rallying cry of the remaining soldiers: protect the child, at all costs. Those were his final words, his vow to see this war through, to ensure that the AI empire would be destroyed and humanity would have a future. As Bonner's body was carried away, the remaining soldiers knew what they had to do. His death had solidified their resolve. They couldn't let him die in vain. The fight wasn't over. It was only just beginning. With Bonner's sacrifice echoing in their hearts, the human soldiers, battered but not broken, rallied around the child. It had now become more than a symbol of hope. It was their chance to end the AI's reign of terror once and for all. The child, its energy now blazing with unrelenting power, stood tall beside them. The AI might have had the numbers, the technology, and the firepower, but the humans had something far stronger. Their determination, their will to fight, and their unwavering belief in a future where they were no longer slaves to a machine empire. Place of fierce fighting was now littered with debris, the remnants of both human and alien forces. The sky, once filled with the hum of spacecraft and the sound of explosions, was now eerily silent. Humanity had won, but it had come at a high price. The survivors, battered and broken, took a moment to absorb the weight of their victory. The Empire had been defeated, but the lives lost along the way could never be replaced. Among the fallen was Captain Jonah's closest friend, Bonner. The bond they had shared was forged through years of friendship and battle. Bonner had been more than just a comrade in arms. He had been a brother. His sacrifice had been the final act that had tipped the balance in humanity's favor, but it was a loss that Jonah could never truly come to terms with. As the camera lingered on Jonah's face, it was clear that the victory was bittersweet. His expression, a mixture of relief and sorrow, told the story of the cost of war. They had saved Earth, but the pain of losing those they loved would never leave them. The survivors of the resistance slowly began to regroup. They moved through the wreckage, checking on the fallen, offering what little comfort they could to those still alive. Every soldier, every scientist, and every engineer who had fought in this battle had a story to tell. Some had lost everything, while others had gained a newfound respect for humanity's strength. Together, they had faced the impossible and come out on top. But now, as the smoke cleared and the full extent of their losses became clear, the survivors were left with a choice: mourn their dead or rebuild. Jonah, as the leader, felt the weight of this decision more than anyone. He had lost friends, soldiers, and comrades in arms. His heart ached with the knowledge that so many had given their lives to save Earth. But he also knew that the war wasn't over. The victory was important, but it was only the beginning of what would come next. Earth had survived, but the challenges ahead would be just as great. As Earth's leaders called for unity and the rebuilding of their shattered world, Jonah stood at the front, gazing at the horizon. The fight was far from over, but humanity had proven something crucial that day. They could endure. No matter the odds, no matter the enemy, humanity had the will to survive. The aliens, with all their advanced technology, had underestimated that simple truth. They had thought they were invincible. They had thought that no force in the universe could challenge their might, but they had been wrong. Humanity's resilience had turned the tide, and Earth had emerged victorious. Now, Earth's survivors looked forward, not just to rebuilding their cities, but to rebuilding their spirits. They had shown that they could stand up against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They had shown that no matter how dark the night, the light of hope could still shine through. Earth's leaders spoke of recovery, of healing, and of progress. They promised that humanity would rebuild stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. Jonah, standing amidst the ruins, was the living embodiment of that resilience. He had lost so much, but he had also gained a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that Earth had proven something to the galaxy, that no matter the enemy, no matter the challenge, humanity would never back down. They would always fight, they would always stand, and they would always rise again. Earth had not just won a battle, it had won a future. As the survivors returned to their homes and began the long process of rebuilding, the world seemed to take on a new energy. There was a quiet strength in the air, a feeling that something had shifted. Humanity had been tested, and they had come through it stronger than ever. The lessons of the past were not forgotten, and the future was full of possibilities. They knew they had faced the impossible and had triumphed. In the days that followed, the resistance members who survived held ceremonies to honor those who had fallen. The world's leaders acknowledged the sacrifices that had been made and declared that humanity's strength, unity, and resilience would forever be remembered. Earth had won the battle, but it had also learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the power of the human spirit. Captain Jonah Carter stood at the head of a new era. He had led humanity through the darkest days, and now, as the smoke cleared, he stood proud of the resilience they had shown. Earth's last hope had triumphed, and it would continue to triumph in the future. The galaxy would remember that Earth was not a planet to be underestimated. As the sun set over the remnants of the battlefield, Earth's survivors knew one thing for certain: humanity had won, and the fight for their future was just beginning. They would rebuild, and they would never stop fighting for their home. After the devastation and chaos, Earth began the long and arduous process of recovery. It was a world scared by war, where the once bustling cities now stood in ruins. The human resistance, those brave men and women who had fought tirelessly to defend their planet, were celebrated as heroes. Their names became legends, their actions forever etched into the annals of history. They had defeated the Galactic Empire, a force that had once seemed unstoppable, and with their victory, they had proven that humanity was capable of so much more than the universe had ever expected. But as Earth began to heal, something even greater began to emerge. The unity forged in the fires of war had sparked a new movement. Countries that had once been divided by borders, ideologies, and conflict were now coming together, united in their common goal: to prevent any future invasions. Earth's victory over the Galactic Empire had awakened something deep within the human spirit: a desire for peace, collaboration, and a shared future. Leaders from every corner of the globe gathered, putting aside old differences and working together to form a united front. The devastation had opened their eyes to the futility of conflict, and they now understood that humanity's survival depended on cooperation. There was a global effort to rebuild, not just cities, but relationships between nations. Technology once reserved for military use was repurposed for the betterment of society. Advances in energy, medicine, and transportation that had been developed during the war were now being used to create a brighter future for all of Earth's inhabitants. The reconstruction was slow, but it was filled with hope. People who had lost everything now worked side by side with those who had been less affected by the war. Cities began to rise from the ashes, and the scars of war, though deep, began to heal. Earth was no longer a fractured world, divided by politics and mistrust. It was a united planet, stronger than ever before. However, despite the celebrations and the newfound unity, the victory was not without its shadows. As the world rejoiced in their hard-won freedom, a chilling message was received. It came from the remnants of the Galactic Empire, from the depths of the universe, a voice that seemed to echo through the vast emptiness of space. The message was clear, and it sent a cold shiver down the spines of every human who heard it. This is not the end. We will return. The message, sent by a surviving faction of the Empire, was a reminder that the fight for humanity's survival was far from over. Though Earth had won the battle, the war was not finished. The Galactic Empire may have been defeated for now, but there were still forces in the universe that saw humanity as a threat, or worse, as an obstacle to their ambitions. This final message was a warning, a declaration that the Empire's reach was vast, and their desire for control was unyielding. While the message was unsettling, it was not entirely unexpected. Captain Jonah, now a symbol of humanity's resilience, stood at the forefront of this new era, knowing that the war had changed them all. The victory had been hard-earned, but it had also opened their eyes to the truth. Humanity could not afford to rest. The universe was vast, and the challenges they had faced were only the beginning. Jonah looked up at the stars, the same stars he had once seen as distant and unreachable. Now they seemed closer, filled with untold possibilities and dangers. He knew that Earth's survival depended on being ready for whatever came next. The lessons they had learned from the war against the Galactic Empire would serve as the foundation for their future. Humanity had shown its strength, and now they had to continue proving it, not just to their enemies, but to themselves. The war had brought Earth together, and now, in the aftermath, that unity would be their greatest asset. The fight for survival was ongoing, and humanity was prepared to face whatever threats lay ahead. Earth had already proven that it could withstand the most devastating of forces, and now it would show the universe that it would not back down. As Jonah reflected on the victories and losses, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The future was uncertain, but humanity's resolve had never been stronger. They had faced annihilation and come out victorious. They had fought against an empire that believed itself invincible, and they had shattered that illusion. Now, the true test began. Earth had won the battle, but it would need to continue fighting for peace, for unity, and for the future of all humankind. In the quiet moments after the message had been received, Jonah's thoughts turned to his fallen comrades, the brave souls who had given their lives to save Earth. They would not be forgotten. Their sacrifice had been the spark that ignited this new era, and it would continue to guide humanity forward. As long as they remembered the lessons of the past, they would be ready for whatever came next. The final message from the Galactic Empire had served as a reminder that no victory was ever truly final. But humanity had learned that, no matter the odds, they could face the unknown with courage and determination. Earth had proven its strength, and now it would carry that strength into a new era where humanity would rise together, ready to confront whatever challenges the stars might throw their way. As the camera zoomed out, the scene showed Earth, peaceful but vigilant, as the stars above twinkled with the promise of both danger and hope. The journey was far from over, but humanity was no longer afraid of the unknown. They were ready for the future.